Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today we're going to be talking to you about Abigail Williams Santa, aka Welfare Abby. So, Welfare Abby is our third version of Abby. Obviously, we have the original form, and then we also have her summer form, who is an AoE foreigner compared to the single target foreigner for her first one. This one, however, is going to be coming to us as a support arts pretender. And again, as a welfare, you're going to be guaranteed to be able to get all 5 copies. She's coming to us with the Christmas 2024 event. This will be 2026 on NA, or again, the Nutcracker Christmas, as I like to call it. So she is a very interesting unit out of the rip. A little bit, her kit is kind of wonky and takes a little bit of understanding to kind of get what they're maybe intending to do with her. She is a very intriguing unit, but I'm going to say I do have some issues with that kit. So we're going to talk about this as we kind of go through. I do think Abby can be used effectively, but I do think for the majority of players out there, she's going to be a unit that is going to be quite, how should I put it, like middling, where basically, unless you really like her, you're probably not going to see much value in her, and you'll probably prefer other options. But again, we'll definitely go over how I think you guys can use her effectively and where some of those issues exist. Let's go ahead and let's dive right in. So taking a look at Abby's raw stats here, you guys can see she gets about 9k attack. Again, she's a 4-star as a welfare here. So 9k attack, still at least a pretty decent range. I do like to see people in the 9 to 10k range for a 4-star. So she's right on the cusp of that, definitely on the lower end, but still acceptable. Her HP value here is only 11.7. I am going to say this is somewhat of a concern for her, but not a huge one. This is still okay for a 4-star. And she does at least have some sustain in her kit that's going to allow her to kind of survive. Her attribute here is Earth Attribute. She's got 102 star absorption, which is basically a little bit higher than the Pretender average. Her star generation is actually going to be a whopping 20.4. This is actually probably one of her better aspects. Again, considering the fact that she is arts, having good star generation, especially with what she has in her kit, is going to be to her benefit. Unfortunately, her biggest concern is going to come right here, which is the NP charge attack. This is the amount of NP you gain whenever you attack. And again, this is not a good number. She is an arts unit, and she does have decent hit counts on her arts card. We'll talk about that when we get to the deck. So there is some offsetting of this, but this is going to be her primary issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get deeper in. Her NP charge defense here is a standard 3%. It's just the amount that she gets basically generated per hit, per attack against her. And her death rate here is going to be 24%, which is a little bit under the average, but pretty much right on it. Her alignment is chaotic good. She is female gendered, and her basic traits include child servant, enema elish nullification, existence outside the domain, fairy tale servant, hominide servant, humanoid, normal servant, and threat to humanity. Again, probably the most interesting one right there is that enema elish nullification. Gil will not be able to do extra damage to her. So taking a look at her deck here, you guys can see she's got a, at least nowadays, somewhat rare deck. We don't often see a whole lot of triple arts decks anymore. Usually they are reserved for supports, and again, with her being a little bit of a support, we can kind of see that's what they were going for here. So she does have triple arts. Again, the 4 hit counts on the arts card is going to make the sort of anemic NP gain offset a little bit and should help her out quite a bunch. She does have the singular buster and quick card. They're also each 4 hits, so nothing too crazy about that. Again, 3 hits is normally your carding average, so with it being 4 hits on each of these, your performance should be okay. Again, the only one that is average is going to be the extra attack here at 5 hits. Taking a look at her active skills now, you can see she will increase her own arts performance for 3 turns by 30%. She'll increase her own critical damage for 3 turns by 50%. And she will gain critical stars every single turn for 3 turns, basically scaling all the way up to 10 as if she has a fragment of 2030 equipped. All of this on a 6-turn cooldown. So definitely we've got multi-turn sort of effects here. But ultimately, for a support, this is a pretty selfish skill, and this is where some people get the idea of Abby being more of a crit unit. There's a little bit more to that. We'll talk about that as we go on. But Again, this is kind of one of the concerns that you're going to have when you use Abby, is that Abby is in a little bit the same way as someone like, say, Miyu. She's got supportive characteristics, but she's also got selfish characteristics. So this does mean that she's not a like all for the party type of support. You're going to have to be careful with how you use her, and you're probably going to need to custom tailor the composition of the party to help Abby succeed. But again, that is just something that you need to understand about her. Taking a look at the second skill here, she increases the value of master skills while she is on the field by 20% for 3 turns. I actually really like this because the first day that I looked at this, fandom did not have it worded this way. This is a better wording of the skill. That is to say, when she is on the field, any master skill that you use will literally gain extra effects. Again, it's 20% here. This doesn't scale with the skill itself, so it's just a flat amount. She also has this on her NP. So this is a nice thing because it does mean that any sort of mystic code ability will get further enhanced. What do I mean by that? So taking a look here at the base mystic code, something like momentary reinforcement, the second skill that gives the 50% up attack, this will get enhanced by an additional, like, say, 20% from that skill. That means that you're going to get even more attack when you use this skill, not just the 50%. You could get, again, 20% additional added on to that. So this is a really nice effect. However, I think in the majority of cases, this is not going to have that great of an impact. For instance, there are certain things it will affect and certain things that it won't. Like the dodge here is not going to gain any benefit. Meanwhile, the heal will also gain an additional 20% healed based off of that. So there is some tangible benefit, but keep in mind that you're only going to be using your Mystic Code skills very sparingly in any fight. They usually have long cooldowns, and you usually do not see a second use of the skill. Again, if we're talking just conventional farming, you're probably only using it the one time at most, if at all. And then certainly when we're talking about challenge fights, the longer the fight goes on, the more you get to use these skills. But obviously, you're kind of probably hoping to end the fight faster just for the sake of timeliness and, again, sort of ease of completion. So there is something to be said about that. Abby is, though, a little bit of a stall unit, and I think you'll see that as we go through the kit a little bit more. But again, she does have the increase right here of the master skills. She also has an increase to her own NP generation rate of 30%. This is definitely going to help offset this anemic 0.38, but there are still going to be concerns. Even with this, basically Abby with an NP into 2 more arts cards will still probably not get her back to full. Yes, you might be able to crit with that. That may get you a little bit closer, but you're probably going to want to do certain things to help facilitate Abby getting back to another NP. She's going to increase her own critical star generation rate for 3 turns by a whopping 100%. This is the similar sort of effect that someone like Cass Gill has. So this is a really nice effect, and you're probably thinking like, ooh, okay, I can use this. And you can, however, keep in mind that other than the first aspect of this skill, literally everything here is also selfish. That is to say, it only applies to Abby. So we're through pretty much the first 2 skills here with no tangible effect to the party other than the master skill effect. Now you can see again, this will also grant her a self-evasion for 2 attacks, 3 turns. This is going to be a, again, as we like to call it, hard defense. So this is a very nice effect to have. It's going to allow you to invalidate NPs and stuff like that. Definitely nice that she has this on top of some of her other effects, kind of offsetting that lower HP value. Taking a look at the third skill here, we finally get to her first real supportive skill. This is going to charge the party's NP gauge by 20%. It's not a huge amount, obviously, but it is something, and it is going to be a reason that you'll probably want to lure the skill. It's also going to overcharge the party's NP by 1 stage 1 time for 3 turns. What does this mean? This means you could potentially use Abby as something of, again, a sort of booster setup unit to get somebody else to pop off. But it could also mean that you could use her in something like the Invincible/Immortal comp, get more charges of Solemn Defense out there, allow yourself to scale a little bit better and be more survivable. So there are a couple of uses that you can use to, again, gain benefit from the overcharge effect of this. She's then going to increase the max HP of child servant allies for 3 turns. Now remember, max HP functions as a perfect heal. That is to say, it does not care how much health you have, it will always restore that amount, even if it would take you over your cap. So max HP is a very, very nice effect to have. Unfortunately, it's also something that can be removed, so just be careful with that. But keep in mind, this is going to affect all child servants. So there are some potential synergies like right here with Miu, where you have another support. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really just going to be about, do you want to pair any of these units with her? Even someone like Benny could be really good due to her also supportive capabilities. But again, it's trying to think about what's going to work well with Abby, considering Abby is a somewhat selfish support. So totally up to you for who to run with her, but the child servants would at least gain this extra heal that Abby would have from her 3rd skill. She's from there going to gain crit stars kind of on command all the way up to 20 of them, so it's just a nice crit star bomb. So she already has really good star generation base-wise for an arts unit. She has a skill that enhances it further by 100%, and she has a star bomb right here in the 3rd skill, meaning she is quite the star generator on her own. Now, taking a look at her passive skills, she has magic resistance A-, increasing her own debuff resistance by 19.5. She's got territory creation C here, increasing her arts performance by 6%. So again, that's going to help offset, again, a little bit more of that, poor NP gain that she has. She gets existence outside the domain B as if she were a foreigner, granting her more critical stars per turn automatically, and then debuff resistance by an additional 8%. So again, this is going to stack basically with the first effect up here, giving her, again, almost 30% at that point. And then her final one here is going to be Dream of Prima Donna A, which is going to increase her own critical star generation rate of her arts cards further by an additional 20%. So again, even more star generation on those arts cards, really, really helping things out. I am going to recommend the mana loading append for her, but keep in mind she is welfare, so you should be able to get all of her coins. The 3rd append being anti-berserker could also be beneficial. Now, normally you're probably thinking, what? She's a support. Why would I want to do this? Well, remember, we did say some people feel like she can be a good crit support, a good crit unit. So think of her almost like, and I've seen people throw out the comparison to something like Super Ryan. I don't really feel like she's Super Ryan. If anything, she's a little bit more like Himiko in that regard. So I think you're going to see a little bit of similarity there. Having that ability to be able to crit pretty hard as a support is going to kind of allow you to pop off against certain enemies. Berserkers could potentially be someone really good for her to do that against. Just keep in mind, the Berserkers are also going to be hitting her back hard as well if you're trying to get into a knockdown drag out. So to me, the 4th append is going to be really, really nice. Why? Because it's further going to increase that crit damage. Again, an additional 30% on top of everything else that she has flying around. She's got 50% in her kit. She's got 50% on her NP. So you've got quite a bit there that you could potentially enhance even more. And her 5th append, obviously the skill reloading, this is going to be really nice just for helping her get back to some of those abilities. She thankfully doesn't have very long skill cooldown times. They're pretty much just the average of 6 turns. But being able to get back to them faster may be the difference in life and death if we have a very sort of quick schedule that we need to meet within the fight of getting, again, an additional re-up of the skills. Keep in mind, too, you could also run her with someone like Tamamo that may be able to reduce those skill cooldowns even further. So that may be something else to think of when regards to, basically building a composition for her. Now we get to the NP. As we've already denoted, it is a support-based NP. It's going to increase the value of master skills by 10% while she is on the field for 3 turns. So when paired with her 2nd skill, this gives her a 30% increase to master skills. So it's why I was hesitant to throw out numbers here, but keep in mind that this is just basically going to be even more at this point. So you would literally take this 3,000 and add on an additional 30%, which is going to be an additional 900 healing, for instance, right here. So you're literally going to be getting, instead of 3,000, almost 4,000 HP off of this. It is statistically significant, but as we mentioned before, you're not going to be using the Mystic Codes very often. in terms of their effect. So consider it as more of like a one-off benefit if you do use her. This can also be used to scale up things like charge effects from Mystic Codes. Just keep in mind that, like, say a 10% charge from a Mystic Code would become like 13% with the extra 30%. So like, it's not going to be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. You could maybe also try to get away with like pairing her with someone like Tezcatlipoca or something like that also has the ability to enhance these for even, more effects. But that's going to be a really niche sort of scenario as to whether or not that can actually be something that benefits you. Still, it's better to have it than not, but ultimately it's not going to be a very game-changing type of deal in most scenarios. She's going to increase the party's critical damage for 3 turns. This does scale with NP levels. Thankfully, we have a welfare here, so you're going to be guaranteed to be getting NP5. So this is going to be, she's going to increase the party's critical damage by 50% for 3 turns. Definitely nice. Definitely puts her in that crit support category. And as we already mentioned, she herself has 50% in her kit. So she's going to be walking around with at least like 100% for a couple of turns there. And if you can manage to get back and get her yet another NP in rapid succession, you could begin to spiral this pretty decently and be able to have some, again, decent firepower out of that. From here, she's also going to recover the party's HP. Again, this is giving you a little bit more sustain. This is just an actual heal instead of the max HP by 3,000 here at the max NP level. And then also reduce all enemies' NP gauge by 1. This does give her the waiver-esque drain effect on all enemies. So again, this is where I say she does have some capacity as a stall unit, just depending. So you could pair her up with, I don't know, say something like Castoria and Tamamo and herself, and she herself could be sort of the crit engine and someone that's really just going to fire off. But really, you're going to be able to kind of just keep the sustain going, keep denying the enemy, and just making it so that the enemy just can kind of never get anything done while you just sit there out healing them and critting them to death. So there is that possibility if you want to go for it. In that regard, I do like the fact that we have another sort of welfare here that can play into the stall compositions, because it really feels like in a lot of ways the game has gotten away from that sort of mentality. So who knows, maybe the devs will try to pull a fast one on us and make stalling more of a thing in the future. But either way, I at least like that we have another option that will be available to literally everybody as long as they did the event and had the prerequisites necessary to get the welfare from it, which again is LB6. Her overcharge effect increases the party's arts performance by 3 turns by 20% base. Now this does scale up. Remember, she does get the 2 ranks 1 time over 3 turns there. So having an additional 30% there for 3 turns on the party could definitely be solid. Like I said, she could be a setup man for an actual damage dealing unit, or herself could be somebody that could, be the engine and the damage dealer. So this is definitely really nice. She's got a lot in her kit there to be able to help solve that NP gain issue. So I think in the end, she'll be fine, but it's going to require you to have kind of everything up, everything going. And so there will be periods where you experience really poor arts card performance for her when you have downtime, when the overcharge isn't ticking, when the NP gain is off. That sort of stuff could be problematic for Abby. So just pay attention to that and be very, very careful for how you run her. Now, based off that, some of our craft essence recommendations, if you're just going to be using her as a pure support, Prisma Cosmos is going to be wonderful for helping automate that process, just getting her to an NP over and over again, kind of without having to use very many of her cards. But maybe you want to use your cards. It's just totally up to you. There is an alternative to Prisma Cosmos if you don't have it. It's not really going to be that good for her, given the fact that it has NP damage, but it is sort of the more common one. It just has way less charge per turn. Just keep in mind that there is another alternative to it should you need it. Another ending is going to be a stellar CE for her, given the fact that it is arts up of 15% here, as well as critical damage of an additional 25%. And it is one of the rare early game CEs that we had released to us that is all attack scaling, but goes beyond the traditional 2,000 cap. So it does go up to 2,400, giving you a little bit extra oomph there if you want to be able to pop off even harder. So again, another ending, if you manage to have it at MLB, if you manage to max it out, could be a very good CE if you're trying to just be somebody that's going to really power her through. Also, something like Honey Lake, like anything that can give her a power modifier that will impact, not her NP because she has a support NP, but more or less her cards, could be really, really good for her. This one's going to give her ignore invincibility, so it's going to stop enemies from being able to kind of prevent her damage. Again, she does have all attack scaling on this, and having the additional burn power mod scaling up to 40% is going to make your cards just hit 40% harder right there. So that's really, really a nice thing, especially when you start thinking about some of these monster crits that could occur. Yes, you would need to put burn command codes on her cards for this to work. But heck, you're probably going to be wanting to put command codes on her cards anyways to help out with the critting. So either way, this could definitely be something that could really help her out. Remember, you only need one burn effect on the enemy for this to be true, so you don't even have to make it like all of your cards, especially if you're trying to like solo with her or something. But yes, this is a very, very powerful modifier that can work for a crit unit, and I've used it plenty of times successfully myself. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I feel like Abby has a very disjointed kit. She's part selfish, part support, but it's kind of up to you to determine how you want to use her. If you see her as more of a support, she can at least provide some, again, like additional benefit in that. Maybe you just want that Mystic Code to hit kind of a little bit higher on the amount of damage boost that it gives. Maybe you're just looking for a little bit of extra crit damage in her NP. Maybe you're looking for some sustain with her healing. I don't know. It's up to you. I do think Abby is an interesting unit, but like I said, I do think she's going to be kind of niche. I think a lot of players are going to go, hey, I don't really need this. This is not something I really want to focus on. But let me know. What do you guys think about Abby? Do you guys think that this is a good kit, or do you guys think that this is ultimately kind of something that you don't really see yourself using too often? I'll be curious to hear you guys' thoughts, and I will see you guys for the next one.